Okay, so today we're continuing on our previous video, planting fall sweet corn. If you didn't see the previous video, I'll put a link to that up top where you can see how we removed the tarp, we made a furrow, we laid our drip tape. We got everything ready to plant. And today we just need to plant. Now I was gonna plant this yesterday afternoon, but we got a little shower, not too much rain, just about the right amount, only about 3/10 or so. And in our soils that soaks up pretty quick. So we'll be able to plant this sweet corn this morning and it should do just fine. As we've been talking about getting ready to plant sweet corn, we've had a lot of people ask about which varieties do best for fall plantings. And to be honest with you, I really can't tell a difference between varieties from spring to fall. It seems like they do the same. So whatever your go-to variety is for spring, it should do well in fall. So you can plant that again in fall. Or if you're feeling frisky, you can try something new in fall. That's always good too. In the past few years, we've grown the ambrosia sweet corn in the fall and it has done really well for us. This year, I'm growing this peaches and cream variety here. Peaches and cream is a SE or sugary extender variety, just like the ambrosia. It's a bicolor, so you're getting yellow and white kernels on the same cob. Since it is an SE variety, it's going to be a little sweeter than the standard varieties, the Silver Queen, stuff like that, but not as sweet as the super sweets. This stuff will store pretty well in the fridge once you harvest it, 5 to 7 days or so. I will say this about planting fall corn. For those super sweet varieties that require a warmer soil germination temperature, you'll probably get better germination with those in the fall than if you was to plant them really early spring before the temperatures have warmed up. So if you want to try super sweet, fall would probably be a great time to try that. Now before we get out there with the Hoss garden cedar and actually plant this fall sweet corn, we always want to make sure that our seed plate is calibrated correctly. This is going to save us a lot of headache when we get out there. The last thing you want to do is just run out there and plant, not check your seed plate, and you get out there and you've got a hopper full of seeds and something's not working right because your seed plate is not calibrated correctly. So we always want to take the steps beforehand, make sure everything's going to work right. So when we do get to the plot, all we got to do is just zip up and down those rows. So let's check our seed plate and we'll go from there. So the first thing we want to do in testing our seed plate is just lay it flat on a table and see how big the seeds are relative to the holes in the plate. We've got our number 4 standard plate here, which is kind of a good starting point for sweet corn. This peaches and cream, like I said, is an SE variety, which means the seeds are going to be smaller than a standard variety like your Silver Queen, but they're also going to be bigger than the super sweets, which tend to be a little more shrunken. So we're going to put some seeds in these holes here, and we want to make sure those seeds lay flat without touching the edge of the plate there. And it looks like those right there are pretty good. Now there's a chance that hole might be slightly too big, and if it was, we could take a blank plate and drill those holes smaller. But that might just work right there. The second step is we'll put this in the cedar and run some seeds through it and make sure everything works okay. All right, and the second step to testing the seed plate is we just want to put it inside the hopper here. We'll put our seed plate in there, our brush, cone, wing nut, all that good stuff. Get that tightened down there. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll put the hopper cap underneath here to catch the seeds as they drop. And I'm just going to pour a few seeds in here. Doesn't take a lot to test it. Just enough to cover the seed plate. And I'm going to spin this wheel right here. I'll try to keep it constantly spinning. And we're just going to watch the seeds drop and make sure this thing doesn't jam. And it looks like everything's falling pretty good. And I can see inside the hopper there in the seed plate that I'm not getting too stuck in one hole there. So I think this plate, the stock number 4 plate, will work just fine for us. The other thing we need to make sure we do before we get out here and plant is make sure our depth is set correctly. So if we look at this little depth gauge here, when that little bubble is flush with the frame, that's in 1/2 inch. When that bigger bubble right there is flush with the frame, that's 1 inch. And then that right there, the big bubble and the little bubble together is 1.5 inches. I want to plant this corn on about 3/4 inch. So I'm going to lower this guy down and get it between that 1/2 inch and inch mark. About right there should be good. At about 3/4 inch. One more thing I wanted to mention before we get out there and plant is the importance of this disc furrow opener here. So as opposed to a shoe or a knife furrow opener that cuts in the soil like that, this disc furrow opener or this rolling coulter is just going to roll along there and create the furrow. Now for what we're doing today, when we're planting on top of drip tape, that's going to be very important. So it's not going to cut the tape. We can plant directly on top of the tape with this here. And also planting in an area with a lot of organic residue or a lot of trash, you got to have a furrow opener like this disc one here. If you saw the previous video, you saw that a lot of that sun hemp was still on top of the surface and kind of mixed in that top soil layer there. So this is going to be important because all that trash won't bunch up here at the top. This guy right here will just roll right through it all, and it does great planting in that leftover residue. All right, so we got everything calibrated correctly on our Hoss garden cedar. Now it's just time for me and little Tiger here to plant these 7 rows of peaches and cream fall sweet corn. All right, so that's a wrap. 7 rows fall sweet corn planted in no time with our Hoss garden cedar here. Now the date to maturity on this stuff is about 80 days, but as I mentioned in the previous video, because it's warmer earlier in the growth cycle of this corn here, it's going to come off, or it's going to mature a lot quicker than that. So we could expect around 65 to 70 days date to maturity. So in just a couple months, we should have some fall sweet corn, probably around the October time frame. And since we've got that drip tape underneath it there, we'll be able to give it plenty of water, and we'll also be able to inject some fertilizer to it, which is going to keep that corn nice and healthy. Hopefully, by growing this sun hemp cover crop before we planted the corn, we won't have to add as many inputs as we normally have. That was the hope, or that was the goal with doing the cover crop. We'll see, but I expect that we won't need quite as much fertilizer as we would normally need if we didn't cover crop beforehand. I'm also really intrigued by the minimum till or the no-till aspect of what we did here behind me. You know, besides taking the double wheel hoe and making a furrow to bury our drip tape, we really didn't disturb the soil at all. Now, yes, you could have did this strictly no-till. You could have came in there and planted all those little corn seeds by hand. That would have took forever. Nobody wants to do that. So we had to cultivate or disturb the soil minimally along the row there where we were going to plant, just so we could plant our corn seeds with something efficient like our Hoss garden cedar here. I'd be interested to hear if any of our viewers or subscribers out there have tried any of these no-till planting techniques. If you have, let us know what you thought about it. Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? Or do you have any additional secrets that you'd like to share to really help with the no-till process? If you're planting fall corn out there, if you've already planted fall corn, I'd really like to hear what varieties you planted. What's your favorite fall sweet corn variety? Put that in the comments, and we'll be glad to try some of those varieties in years to come. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time.